Hi, my name is Oscar Gill. This is a video presentation explaining the differences between freedom and liberty in early Western civilization. Very fascinating, interesting, um, and difficult week of reading because my assumption was I already knew what liberty and freedom meant. However, what freedom and liberty meant throughout the ages is a lot different from what I think. Um, like, for example, according to the Greek sources upon which Roman as well as early modern writers upon this subject drew, tyranny was a state not simply of a political government but of a full. For a monarchy to generate tyranny was to enslave to that tyrant's lawless passions at the reason not only of his subjects but of himself. In Plato's Republic, the extreme embodiment of injustice. In the words of Algernon Sidney, observe no happiness without liberty, no man more a slave than he is, overmastered by vicious passions, and are there and therefore unhappiness with the tyrannical man, a slave to his selfish lusts, if neither liberty nor happiness, where there is not virtue. And now this is all like in the olden times when, according to Aristotle's Politics, as well, the difference between a king and a tyrant was that whereas the former ruled for the good of the public, the latter governed only in his own selfish interests. And Sidney put it again, by the lovers of Commonwealth. Liberty, by contrast, with a quality of rational self-command within the individual's real and substantial liberty, depends on sobriety of conduct and integrity of life. It was a violation of nature that one is incapable of governing. Principles mean men passionately devoted to public good and should be committed to the government of another. In this state, liberty was collective, rational self-government. It was because the main cause why Almighty God gave men reason was that they should make use of the reason for that end, that God gave them the leveler. Thomas Rainsbury famously insisted that regardless of their material wealth, every man born in England ought not be exempted from the choice of those who are to make laws for him to live under. The present constitution which enslaves the people of England, they should be bound by laws which they have no voice at all, is, I think, the most tyrannical law under heaven. So that was from what were Commonwealth principles. Our Constitution is called the democracy because power is in the hands of not a minority, but of the whole people. When it is the question of settling private disputes, everyone is equal before the law. When the question of putting one person before another in the positions of public responsibility, what counts is not membership of a particular class, but the actual ability which the man possesses. And just our political life is free and open, so are our relations with each other. We are free and tolerant in our private lives, but in public affairs we keep to the law, especially those which are for the protection of the oppressed. The weakness in which we are born renders us unable to attain good ourselves. The furious barbarity of the loose multitude bound by no law and relegated by no discipline is wholly repugnant to it. The first step towards the cure of this pestilent evil is for many to join in one body, that the various talents that man possess may be good discipline, be rendered and useful to the whole. Out of the meanest piece of wood or stone being placed by a wise architect conduces the beauty of the most glorious building. Men are rough pieces of timber or stone, which 'tis necessary to cleave, saw, or cut. Many men have made war. Many men have war made great, whom peace makes small. If putting vast sums of money into treasury, the power readily to equip land and sea forces to drill shrewdly with ambassadors from abroad, has seemed to any of you greater, wiser, more useful to the state than to administer and correct justice to the people, to help those cruelly harassed and oppressed, and to render every man properly his own deserts. Too late will you discover how mistakes you have been, unless you have unless you expel avarice, ambition, and luxury from your minds, and extravagance from your families as well. You will find a home, and within that tyrant who you believed was to be sought abroad in the field of Milton, Second Defense. Also, on liberty, and you can see some of the relation between liberty and freedom during that period. True liberty did not entail the military conquest of others, but the rational conquest of self. This did not mean that Milton was simply a poet's agent umpire. So, real liberty from the human will entailed subjection, to God, to reason, and the law. So, those are just a few, and here's another. This also meant adopting the attitude toward life that viewed it as a gift from God. This is on liberty and freedom, and the relation. One that ought to be not dispensed by death or surrendered people into slavery, something that was genuinely a problem in the age of Viking raids. If the laws of the kingdom did not protect life, then the theory of people risked defeat and conquest. Just as the king fell under the judgment of God according to whether he maintained justice, peace, morality, and the Christian truth, so did his people. So the people had a responsibility, just like the king had a responsibility to God to maintain, not maintain justice, peace, morality, and the Christian truth. That was from the Christianity and the common law, rediscovering the Christian roots of English legal system. That's really interesting. Okay, and here's another. The fundamental values of English legal tradition were exemplified and formulated by Christianity, not only as a theory, but as a way of life and feeling, in short, as a religion. This religious identity resulted in an inviolable political environment whereby citizens could take their legal rights seriously, such as considering these rights God-given, not government-created. They would also find in the law-abiding nature of Christianity a justification for respecting the principles and institutions of the rule of law, and primarily as a matter of high moral obligation. The secret of liberty, a libertarian regime, one is to say in which subjective rights are inviolable, cannot be maintained if the majority of these members of society who take part in politics are not concerned to keep it intact. Okay, if they all have a similar interest, then there's a bigger opportunity or bigger chance that the secret of liberty will stay. It's just when suddenly people start getting richer. When everyone's all divided and people have more concern for their stuff rather than, a lot of people concerned for the same stuff, such as what happened to Rome. That's why it fell apart. And then, of course, the Magna Carta. And you can see the preamble, Edward by the grace of God, King of England, and so on. He says at the very end there, confirming the liberties of England in these words. And he states some of the liberties that he said that his subjects, barons, etc., should have. Excuse me. Yes, so those are just some of the things we talked about in the class this week. But however, it talked about liberty and freedom during that period. The main points of devising freedom and liberty during that period was, as you can see, the king gave certain liberties that men didn't have during that period in the Magna Carta time frame. And people, even though they didn't have rights, they still had rights under God, because life was a gift from God, and they ought not be disposed to slavery um, in that they don't need to be slaves um, to their they ought not be slaves to any of their passions, but use their liberty wisely unto God. And I guess that's what Milton was talking about. So, all right. So yeah, hopefully, hopefully you guys got this. Thank you.